So doesn't it make sense when it comes to a Sabbath or it comes to an actual holiday for your family, you don't just automatically like, oh, I'm ready to rest and relax. You're not. Your whole body is primed for either fight or just collapse. And so I think that understanding is really helpful, because if you don't have that understanding, you think you're crazy and you beat yourself up for why I can't rest, or you beat your spouse up for like, why can't you just rest as a family? Like, why can't you just be with us and engage with us? It makes sense why they can't. You are listening to the Famous at Home podcast with Dr. Josh and Christi Straub.
Because when it's all said and done, we all want to know that we were famous at home. Welcome back to the Famous at Home podcast. We're in a part 2 series here on rest. Before we jump in, here's a word from our sponsors. Hey everybody, Josh Straub here with Famous at Home. We want to introduce you to the Famous at Home Starter Bundle. This is something we created just for you. All you have to do is click the button to sign up to receive our workbook, 7 decisions to putting your family center stage. You'll also get a feelings chart handout that you can implement with your kids and with your spouse. And you'll also receive the 100 commonly held values worksheet so that you can sit down with your family and discuss the values that you want to set as a family that will provide vision for how and you want to lead your family in the direction that you're going to head in. So you get those 3 things right away as soon as you sign up. In addition to that, we will send to you our top podcast episodes on marriage, parenting, and family, the most listened to and the most foundational for developing emotional connection with your loved ones. You'll also receive past newsletters, our exclusive weekly newsletter. You'll be enrolled to receive that on an ongoing basis. These are real-time newsletters of what's happening in our lives and what we're doing and implementing to be famous at home that we want to give to you, just weekly nuggets to keep us equipped every single week. And then you'll also receive the weekly podcast episodes as well. This starter bundle is all free. We want to give it to you. Just click the link to sign up. All right, we're entering back into rest. We talked last week about it. This week is coming up. So this is releasing. Sunday is Palm Sunday. So go get 10 Days of the Easter Story. Start it with your kids. Buy it for your grandkids. Buy it for your friends. Buy it for your neighbors. Buy it for your pastor. Buy it for everybody. If you go to a restaurant, just take a copy into the restaurant for everybody and just give it away. We would love for you to get 10 Days of the Easter Story, a family experience through the feelings of Holy Week. It really is a fun devotional.
Kennedy gave it to all her classmates in her little tutorial as like their little Easter gift. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea.
Great idea.
It was her idea. And I was like, that's a great one. Why give you more chocolate?
Yeah. Give them Easter. Why give more chocolate? Give them Easter.
Yeah. Like the real
devotionals.
Easter.
Absolutely. So today we're talking about rest again. And, we talked about it last week. We talked about how you enter into, what does it look like to enter into rest? Why is it so difficult to enter into rest? And when you want to enter into rest today, we're talking about it from the standpoint of you actually have the ability to enter into rest. Your vacation is upon you. You just got out of spring break and you went to spring break and you were like, I actually can rest. And I can't shut my brain off.
I'm like coming out of my skin.
I'm picking up my phone every 3 seconds. I'm checking my email every 2 seconds. I just can't shut my brain off. Or we'll talk about Sabbath as well, because I get this question a lot. What do you do with Sabbath? What do you do? How do you actually rest one day of the week? When you've got birthday parties, you've got, and there's a deeper underlying thing happening here that we have to pay attention to. And I think we'll start with that. So you want to start with Sabbath? So
I think and just to say, like, and we talked about this a little bit last week, but just this understanding that, like, I want to say you make sense. If you feel what we just described, if you go on vacation or you get to a Sabbath day and you feel like you are coming out of your skin, you can't stop doing the things, even though you want rest, like you're desperate for rest and you just can't. And so maybe, this is no shame, you might find you get on to social media and you scroll. You might find you have to drink. You might find you eat. You might find you have to like go exercise or like you have to get it out. Just know You make sense. There's a reason why you are not able to enter into rest. And that's what we want to talk about today, because that is a built-in protective mechanism that your nervous system is doing in order to keep you safe. And so basically we just did a teaching on this with our My Kids EQ coaching group. I guess it was a couple weeks ago now. And I feel like everyone was like, that was so helpful, because it helps you understand not just yourself, but your kids, your husband, like your spouse, your people around you. And you're like, why are they like that? Or why are they responding like that? And why am I responding like this? So reason is our nervous system begins developing in utero. So whatever the conditions are in the uterus of your mother, of what she's going through, her stress levels, where she's at, it'll start to develop in yours. And so your nervous system is primed for a certain state. And without going into a whole lot of details, there's 3 main states. One is what we'll call ventral. If you're familiar with polyvagal theory, if you've heard that term, it is a theory, it's evolutionary based, but it's very helpful and it's very practical. Like, you realize this is truth based on your experience. But this ventral is where we are calm, we're able to connect, and where we're curious. It's where we're able to be in relationship. This is where we ideally want to be all the time. One step down from that is called sympathetic nervous system. It's your fight or flight response. It is what protects you from threat. It's what, turns on to protect your body and keep you alive. It is necessary. It is God-given and created. The problem is when we get stuck in that state, and that's what is happening. You might find that you actually it's not just becomes a state that protects you from threat, but that your body perceives threat all the time. And so it becomes a chronic state. And that's what happened to me. If you've heard of me talk about those early years of life when I hit the bottom rung of life, which is so funny. I have used that term all these years, and it's actually the bottom rung of this, what we call this ladder, this polyvagal ladder, is dorsal. And that is what happens when you are stuck in sympathetic, or you are stuck in that fight or flight response for too long. And the amount of energy that your body is exerting to just stay there it's tremendous. And so what happens is that your body basically throws an e-brake, where it's like, you actually aren't going to survive if you stay in this any longer. And so it pulls this e-brake, which drops you into dorsal. It's the bottom rung of the ladder. And it's so funny that I have called it that all these years. I just put that together. But it really is, it's like numb. It's disconnected. It's unable to feel. It looks a lot like what people would diagnose as depression. And I believe that's what that state feels like. And when you feel that, it is your body's way of telling you, I am really tired. And so rest is not just the priority, it's the only option. Like, you're not going to make it. And so you might be in a season like that. You might have felt a season like that. You're not even resting. You're just like, you might get on social media and just scroll. And so it's just this numb, and then you feel guilty about that. But you're still not really resting. You're just, it's survival. And so if you are in either of those 2 states, or you tend toward either of those, you might not be in them. You might not be stuck in them, but that's your tendency. So after a long week of work, you might drop into dorsal, where you're just like on the weekends checked out. And we work with a lot of couples like that, where it's like, I want so much from him. He's gone all week. And then I want him to be engaged with the family, and he's not. And that's because he's dropped into dorsal. And that makes sense. He's been on all week, and probably in a very chronic state of on for not just this past week, but all the weeks and months before, because work feels like survival. He can't just be himself. He's in a survival state. And so he is fighting to just get through every day, and then he just is exhausted. Or you might be in this fight state. And so I feel like that's the one I know that's where I tend to, which which would look like hypervigilance. You are on all the time. You are perceiving like, okay, what do I need to do? So even I caught myself today, we stopped filming for a second and because the dog was barking and Josh left, and I immediately picked up my phone and I'm looking text messages, emails, like scrolling through. That is scanning your environment for threat. I'm looking to see like, am I missing anything? Because I've been engaged here and now it's like, shoot, like what's falling through the cracks? That is a sign that you are in sympathetic. So doesn't it make sense when it comes to a Sabbath or it comes to an actual holiday for your family, you don't just automatically like, oh, I'm ready to rest and relax. You're not. Your whole body is primed for either fight or just collapse. And so I think that understanding is really helpful, because if you don't have that understanding, you think you're crazy and you beat yourself up for why I can't rest, or you beat your spouse up for like, why can't you just rest with the family? Like, why can't you just be with us and engage with us? It makes sense why they can't. And in our coach, like this is a much bigger conversation of how you actually begin to heal and the things that are steps that are necessary in order to heal, in order to move your body out of those states. And that's what we do in coaching. And it's amazing. I mean, your body is built to heal. The Lord has created us in such a beautiful and intricate way, but we need to find safety in order to know that we can move out of those states of protection and vigilance.
And there's ways to do that in the here and now. There's ways to do that. Like that's why this is a coaching modality, as opposed to, we're not just going back into your past and looking at your history and looking at your trauma and looking at all these things that are like causing all of this.
You don't even need to know that.
To do that.
Yeah.
There's ways to orient yourself in the here and now and to experience that rest, to experience that ability to be able to enter into the present moment. Yeah. And, it's one of the things that Christi does. And I, especially as it relates to Sabbath, as it relates to how we do that, as it relates to the holiday, we want to get into that practically. And so we're going to do that here. We're going to talk about that because that's a question we get a lot. How do you actually Sabbath? Because if you've listened to us for a while, or you know our family story, we do a Friday night Shabbat dinner to Saturday night where we end with a family movie night or something of that nature. But we really do everything we can to Sabbath on Saturday, because Sunday usually we're at church, we're serving, things like that. We use that as our ramp-up day. And there's just a lot going on to get ready for the week. And so Sundays usually typically aren't a great day for our family to rest. Now, granted, Sabbath day is going to look very different for everybody, and that's one of the things we'll talk about. But I get a lot of people saying, well, how do you actually do it on a Saturday? Because there's birthday parties and there's sporting events and there's all these things. And I think it's important. I want to be able to talk about that. What does actual rest look like? We're not just laying on the couch, watching the boob tube all day and just, we're actually doing things that bring soul rest to our lives. And I think that's what's critical. So we're going to talk about those things after a word from our sponsors. Hey everybody, Josh Straub here with Famous at Home. I want to introduce you to something if you haven't already seen it. This is our new book, Famous at Home, 7 Decisions to Putting Your Family Center Stage in a World Competing for Your Time, Attention, and Identity. When a couple or a family comes to us and says, hey, Josh, we have a question. What do we do next? We always point to this book. This is our coaching playbook. This is the play-by-play strategies that we use to help families to be famous at home. And so if you have not picked up this book yet, we highly encourage you to get a copy. You can see a link in the show notes. You can click a link right here in the video, and we would love for you to be able to get a copy of this in your hands. If you want to go deeper than the podcast episodes, this is the way to do that. It's our way of walking alongside your family to help you be famous at home. Okay, so Christi, I'm just going to ask you, we talked about, how do you orient yourself in the here and now? What is one way that somebody in the here and now could orient themselves when they are feeling in a state of unrest?
So if you find yourself, first of all, if you find yourself right now, your thoughts are a lot of now thinking, meaning it has to get done now. Oh, I have to do this. I see the floors I got to clean the floors now. I've got to, the dishwasher. I have to unload the dishwasher now.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I got an email. I have to respond to that now.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That is sympathetic thinking. That is a surefire way. You are in sympathetic. You are in fight or flight mode. Okay. Acknowledge that. How do you get out of it? And what Josh just referred to as orienting, it's the way all clients are like probably smiling, because this is how we will begin every session, because you have to begin to find your way back to the here and now, this present moment. And that is the moment that God is present with us. And so we talked about it. And I was like, what if we just did a little bit of that on the podcast, that you actually get to experience it a little bit? Because I have a mentor who said, if you could she'll say to clients, if they come in, and she'll begin with this, and she'll say, if you never come back to me, if we're not a fit, if I'm not your cup of tea, that's totally fine. But if you could just do this 5 times a day, you will change and you will heal. And so that's how powerful it is. And so I'm going to do it with you. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Okay. So wherever you are right now, if you're driving your car, or maybe you're in your kitchen, or folding laundry, or going for a walk.
I'm sitting here on the couch.
You're sitting on the couch. But I want you to just let your eyes go. We make them stare at things all the time and force them. And I just want you to let them go. I want you to let them be curious. Go where they want to go, and just notice what you notice. It might be a color, it might be a texture, it might be a plant, or maybe something moving, or something still. But just notice what you notice. And what stands out to you? Where does your eye go?
Honestly, the red record button.
And what does that say to you?
We're live.
So you feel the pressure?
No, I don't feel, well, maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's because it stood out, because I looked around and it popped out because it's red.
Yeah, so if you look at that red button right now, and everyone else, whatever it is you're looking at, just notice how your body feels when you look at that. Maybe you feel tension. Maybe you can get a little bit of air. I always like to to look outside, or to look at something that's living, like a tree or a plant, and notice the shape of the leaf. Notice the green, and just notice it. And then see how that translates to your body. You might notice you sigh. You might notice, there it is. You just took a breath. Notice maybe you take a breath. And that's you coming back into your body. Here you are in the present, here and now. So what do you notice? Is that red light feeling still a threat?
Oh, no, I don't think it's a threat. I think what it's done for me is it makes me realize how real it is to be with other people right now. Yeah. Like other people listening in.
Right.
But that are family, that are people that are listening in going, you're our family. And it's comforting to know that there's people listening that are, we're all in this together.
How does comfort feel? Where do you feel that in your body? And I know it's a weird question, but we've become so disconnected from our bodies that this is what happens, is that we actually don't pay attention to them anymore.
Yeah, I would say it's in my arms.
Yeah. Does that feel
lighter?
Yeah. Yeah. And so to just notice and bring your attention to your arms, and just notice what lightness in your arms feels like. Because maybe that's sort of what safety feels like. You can let go.
Yeah. Welcoming.
Yeah.
And welcoming others into my world.
Yeah. There's an openness where it feels does that feel like you even can maybe get some more? I noticed you're sitting up a little, like you might have a little more air.
Yeah.
You can breathe.
Yeah.
And so just that process of, we could keep going.
And I can tell you what it's done too, is just one last thought is I think when I first looked at it, it's the pressure to perform, right? Because you're doing a podcast, it's the pressure to perform.
Right.
And as I oriented myself, funny enough, and as I started to pay attention to my arms and just that relaxation and taking a deep breath, it was more of an openness where it wasn't it wasn't that I had to perform anymore. It was more of a, oh, these people are my family. This is our podcast family.
Yeah.
I don't need to perform. I can just be me.
Yeah.
And
how does that feel?
Oh, it feels lovely because I
Yeah.
can just be me. It doesn't matter who,
Yeah.
and even if you're not a family, even if you're somebody who's listening to this with a critical ear going, you guys are wackos. That's okay.
And you might.
And you might, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's, you know.
And pay attention to that. And so to that, like that critical voice, like notice how that feels in your body, because you're probably feeling a whole lot of tension and something's protecting you. And just pay attention to that. So there's some part of you. I understand that. I have a very strong critical protective part, and it's meant to protect me, right? It's protecting me from what could be a threat to me somehow. But just know, like, somewhere along the way that came in and it served its purpose. But that is where orienting, very simple. All we did was look around a room. There's lots of different ways we can do it. And I do it differently every time, because you don't want to have the same experience every time. You won't, first of all, because something new will come up. But it has brought you back. It's like, now I'm fully present. I'm fully here. And so the to-do list and the running list in your head is gone. And so to just allow yourself, like, you can do that driving down the road, going for a walk. Literally, you could stare at your carpet and notice what you notice, and then notice what that feels like in your body and where you are. And that's the very beginning to learning how to rest. You can only rest when you are in this moment.
And one of the other ways that I do that too, there's a number of these exercises that you can do. One other one that is really powerful that I tend to do, and we do this together before we go to bed, is just deep breathing. Just simply breathing in through your nose to the count of 4, holding to the count of 4, and then releasing out of your mouth to the count of 8. And there's a lot of times where I'll recite a prayer. I will just, recite.
That just made me breathe.
Particularly be still and know.
Yeah.
And there's an actual physiological response that's happening in your body that is actually calming your body.
Yeah.
And it is moving you. When you breathe in your chest, it keeps you in the fight or flight. Whereas if you breathe fully into your lungs,
your diaphragm deep down.
Diaphragm, like deep down, it brings you back into a restful state. And so it's
sigh breathing is also really powerful. So if you breathe in, that's another way you can orient. Breathe in, and then I'll try not blast your eardrums, but if you, P.S. another tidbit, if you find yourself sighing a lot, which I do, that is also a sign you're in sympathetic.
You do that a lot.
I do that. That's a sign you're in fight or flight. And so it just maybe use that as a cue that I need to come back into this
And
space.
I want to say this too, because I think this is important before we just jump into Sabbath, and I'll talk a little bit about Sabbath and how we do that. But one of the biggest things that causes tension in our marriage, or at least it did in the past, it doesn't as much anymore, is when Christy would sigh. Because, as she said, she is critical. There is a critical spirit that can come out as a way to protect herself. And when she's feeling overwhelmed, that critical spirit comes out at me. That sighing comes out where we all feel it. I mean, even our kids pick up on when she's sighing, the atmosphere of the environment of the home changes. And it would be a contentious, and again, it's not as much anymore. I think number one, because you're healing and you're growing and you're not is living in that as much. But I think number two is I've come to recognize that when she's sighing, it's not about me. Whereas in the past, I would make it about me, and rather than going, oh, wait a minute, there's something, she's overwhelmed, and I need to figure out a way to serve her. And I think we don't argue about it as much anymore, because now I hear her sigh, or I feel it, and I'm not getting onto the defensive. I'm actually entering into her world and going, what do you need right now? And I think that's been a huge game changer for us. And so don't let that sigh, like if you're sighing and if your inability to rest is coming in between your marriage, start pursuing within your spouse's heart to find out what is it that you need right now to rest. And your spouse might not even be able to answer that, but just where do you feel the overwhelm right now?
Yeah. And to know if you are the sire, if you're in that state, you won't often notice that you do it. So everyone around you, and that's where it's really helpful to be in relationship with people that love you and are safe, because they can say those things to you. I literally had friends the other night literally tell me, you're not finishing your sentences. Like, that's how I know I was talking about something. We were actually doing sessions like with each other. And she was like, I don't know that you know this, but you're not finishing your sentences. Like, that's how overwhelmed your brain is. Like, you're literally zapping from thought to thought and not finishing. I had no idea I was doing it. But we can catch that in one another in love and be like, hey, what's going on? Like, I don't need to fix this, but I can tell there's a lot. You're processing a lot right now. You're really activated is a good way to say it, where it's just, you're on, like you are feeling like you have to perform right now or protect. And I noticed that, and like, how can I help you? What do you need? Do you want to go outside? Do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to?
And I think this is the big component of this. So what does Sabbath look like? I would find one day that you can practice Sabbath.
Yeah.
Find one day that you're going to defend the rhythm of saying no.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is it going to be every single day that you get to do this during that week? No. Like, there's Saturdays that I'm asked to go speak, or that I have the privilege of being able to go speak, and I say yes to those things. So what we do instead is we might practice it when I get back the next day, or we practice it the day before I leave. But what we're doing is we're doing the best that we can to defend that rhythm during that week, and that we don't get out of the rhythm. And so it might not fall on that day all the time, but that is the day that we most prioritize it in every other week of the majority of the weeks of the year. And so we really do a pretty strong job of saying no to things. Now, our kids are currently, and this helps a lot, our kids currently aren't playing any activities or sports that are influencing our Saturdays.
Well, but we made that decision.
We made that decision. Our kids were a part of making that decision. They'd actually rather rest in this season than be engaging in activities. And so we were like, okay, this is great. Like, our kids have tasted this. And so they're doing, activities during other times of the week, but Saturday is that day. And so I think it's important to find the day that you have to say the less no's on. If that's Sunday, if that's Saturday, whatever that looks like for you, where you have to say the less no's. And then be able to say no. You don't have to attend every birthday party. Your family is your priority. If you're not resting because you're running from thing to thing to thing, it's important that you know what you're saying no to say, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And typically that yes means a no to our family.
Okay. And I'm just going to add this, because I've had the birthday party thing seems really big. Everyone's like, but what do you do with birthday parties? And I'm like, that's funny so here's how I help them delineate it. Is this because you want to go, or because you feel you have to? Because if you want to go, then that tells me that is restful to you, because rest doesn't mean laying on a couch all day. It means filling up all the cups that are empty from the week. So if that means I get to be with friends and community and I get so filled up, then that's your Sabbath. That's your rest day. Go to the birthday party. And if it's a family or a kid in the class that you're like, if you feel it's because you have to go, then that is a hard no. So like birthday parties, that's a fairly easy decision maker to me. It either fills up your cup and it's great. There are certain, people and relationships and kids in our kids' world that it's like, oh my gosh, it'd be so great to be with them. It'll be so fun. So go. And the ones that you feel you have to, that is a hard no.
And the other component of this is plan your Sabbath days. You have to work to rest.
Yeah.
Let me say that again. It takes work to rest.
Mm-hmm.
Do activities that bring your soul life.
Yes.
Don't do activities that don't bring your soul life. It may require you having to put your phone away. And I mean that. Like, I mean actually turning it off and putting it away. For a lot of you, that's going to be like an absolute, I'll never forget Diane Langberg saying, anything you cannot fast from owns you. There are so many of us that are owned by our phones that actually putting it away for an extended period of time, we come up with every single excuse in the book to not put it away, yet it's the one thing that's not giving us true rest. So even if it's for an hour, put it away for an hour. Even if it's for 2 hours, put it away for 2 hours. Put it away during that day. Make plans so that, listen, your no's get a lot more frequent when you have big plans, when you have big goals. If you set big goals and you set big plans with your family, it's easy to say no to all these other things because you have the opportunity. And I get that whole big goals thing. Like the bigger our goals are, my friend Jordan Rayner talks about that. The bigger your goals are, the more no's you say in your life, and the easier it is to say no to the things that aren't going to help you accomplish your big goals. The same thing goes with our family. When we have big plans with our family and we prioritize plans with our family, all the other no's are easier to say, and because you want to accomplish those things with your family and you want to rest. With young kids, we block our time. We talk about this in the Famous at Home book. We'll block our time. If Christy needs 3 hours by herself on a Sabbath day, I take the kids for those 3 hours, and she goes and gets 3 hours to, do the things that are going to bring her to life. And then we flip. And I might do woodworking. Woodworking brings me to life. Cooking is bringing me to life lately. If you are a cook or you are a chef, you don't cook on your Sabbath because it's your normal job. Like, do the things that I use my brain a lot. We're creating a lot. I try to shut my brain off and do things that actually bring me rest. Believe it or not, mowing my lawn, I will mow my lawn on some Sabbath days because I don't mow lawns for a living. And up until what I've learned is about an hour to an hour and 20 minutes is my max. And then it starts to feel like work. So I will do it for an hour, 20 minutes, and then I'll shut her down and I'm done. Because then at that point, it starts to feel like work. Prior to that, it's all life-giving to me. And so find the things that are life-giving for your family, enter into those, say yes to those, and that will help your soul just bring you rest.
Good.
And we talk about more of this in the Famous at Home book. You can check that out. We'll put it in the show notes today. But I hope this is helpful. I hope it helps you orient to time and space. I hope it helps you orient when you're on vacation. I hope it helps you orient on your Sabbath. And by the way, if you have questions, please go to famousathome.com/podcast. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can enter questions. You can, say, hey, we want to talk. Give us suggestions for more episodes because I feel like there's more we can be talking about rest that we just aren't. But we'd love to serve you, our podcast family, and serve you well.
Now that Josh is all open again.
Now that I'm all open to you all, let's hear from you. Let's serve you well. Till next week, keep in mind that the greatest red carpet you will walk is through your front door.
Keep being famous at home. We love you.